Good morning. Hello. Christy Park, TDL's Executive Director, will now get us started.
Great. Thank you, Courtney, and welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today for this virtual annual meeting of the Vireo Users Group. So pleased to see all of you here today. I'm Christy Park, the Executive Director of the Texas Digital Library, which serves as the organizational home for Vireo. We're going to follow this agenda today, and we're going to start with some introductory remarks from me and a few polls to get to know who all is in attendance. And then we'll, after that, have some updates on Vireo development and migrations with a focus on accessibility improvements included in the latest releases. And then after a short break, we'll discuss work we've done in the past year or so to assess the sustainability of the Vireo open source software and actions we're taking to grow and support this community of users. And we'll finish up with a call for feedback on current work and some open time for Q&A and discussion. There's a link to our agenda on this slide, and we're going to share that in chat also. There's also a shared community notes document, and I'd like to ask that if you're planning on taking notes today, that you do so in that shared document in the spirit of community. That link, if you miss it in chat, is also on the agenda, and you can access it from there. Throughout the meeting today, please use the Zoom chat to list any questions as you think of them, and we'll address those during the Q&A time we've set aside. And same for any Vireo wish list items that you think of or have brought with you today. We'll capture those for discussion later in the agenda as well. So as we get started, I want to begin with just a few brief remarks about the Texas Digital Library, which, as I mentioned, serves as the org home for the Vireo open source software project. Texas Digital Library is a library consortium based in Texas that provides services that enable open access. Those services are built in a shared open infrastructure and sustained through a strong, collaborative, and mutually supportive community. TDL has been working with Vireo since its beginnings in 2007 as an IMLS-funded project led by developers at Texas A&M Libraries, one of our founding members. And Texas A&M continues to serve a really crucial role in contributing development resources to the project. And they and we are aided by coding and governance contributions from Texas Tech Libraries, Baylor, University of Illinois, UT Southwestern Medical, and others from within the TDL and the Vireo open source community of users. We also host Vireo as a service for 13 of our 30 member institutions listed here, and many representatives from those TDL member organizations are with us today, so I want to say a special welcome to all of you. We're glad you're here. For TDL and many users outside of the consortium, Vireo is one piece of an ecosystem of software and systems that support open access to scholarship. In addition to providing Vireo as a service, Texas Digital Library hosts DSpace digital repositories that more often than not serve as the deposit locations for theses and dissertations submitted via Vireo or through other workflows. We also host the Texas Data Repository, which is built in Dataverse and used for publishing research data and ancillary materials, as well as nearly 90 open access journals in the Open Journal Systems platform. Through this ecosystem, TDL is providing free and open access to many, many hundreds of thousands of items, including theses and dissertations. And we see Vireo as a really key component of this open research infrastructure, and we're proud to support it for our members and facilitate its use for our global community of users who deploy and maintain it under the open source license. We believe at TDL that this kind of community supported and open research infrastructure, as opposed to commercial, for-profit, and proprietary, is the best path towards sustainable, equitable, and ethical open access to scholarship. And we invite you through this meeting and through your engagement with Vireo to engage with us in supporting it and contributing to its long-term sustainability. We're so glad you've signaled your interest and enthusiasm for this community by your attendance today. And speaking of that community, we're going to take a moment here to find out who is with us today. So I invite you to please go ahead and drop your name and institution into the chat box if you haven't already, maybe where you're joining from so we can get an idea of who's represented here. We're also going to run a few polls in a couple minutes to better get to know this crowd. And while you're adding your intro into the chat, I'm going to introduce your hosts from the Texas Digital Library and the Vireo Users Group Steering Committee. I'll start with the TDL staff. And if you're here when I mention your name, please maybe unmute and just say hello and wave so folks can see you. First off, Frank Smutniak, who is TDL Senior Software Engineer and Lead Developer for Vireo. And Courtney Muma, our Deputy Director and our Vireo Service Manager as well.
Hey y'all, I'm in San Antonio, Texas. Happy to see you today.
Awesome. Our other hosts today are the Vireo Users Group Steering Committee, which organizes all Vireo Users Group activities, including this annual meeting. It also solicits ideas from the users group about how to improve Vireo, documents those ideas and organizes them. Frank and Courtney serve as part of that steering committee. But the group is led by two co-chairs, one from a TDL member institution, one from outside the TDL consortium. One of our co-chairs currently is Billy Peterson Lugo from Baylor University. Billy, can you say hello and tell us a little what you do at Baylor?
Good morning, everyone. At Baylor, I'm the Associate Dean for Library Collections, Systems, and Digital Services.
Thank you. And our other co-chair currently is Emily Wookner from the University of Illinois. Emily, can you say hello and tell us what you do there?
Hi, yeah, I'm Emily Wookner. I work in the Graduate College at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign.
Awesome. Thanks, Emily. And another Vireo Users Group Steering Committee member joining us today is John Krosno from UT Southwestern Medical Center. John, say hello.
Hello, I'm the collection management librarian at UT Southwestern.
Wonderful. Thanks, John. And last but not least, we have our final steering committee member who also serves in the role of product owner for Vireo. So this person in the product owner role serves as a liaison between the Vireo users group and the development team. And they receive the prioritized list of software improvements from the steering committee and negotiate their adoption by developers. And they have the final say on whether or not system functionality sufficiently addresses all those requested needs. And currently, the person in that Vireo product owner role is Christopher Starcher from Texas Tech University. Chris, can you say hello?
Hello, I'm at Texas Tech University. I'm the digital systems librarian here.
Thanks, Chris. Okay, so next up, we want to hear a little bit from all of you, and momentarily Courtney is going to launch a poll where you can answer a series of questions to tell us a little bit about how you're using Vireo. And I'm just going to run briefly through the questions before she shares the poll. So the first question will be, what version of Vireo are you using? The next question will be, what best describes your plans to upgrade to Vireo 4? We're also asking, what type of single sign-on service are you using with Vireo, if any? And finally, do you keep content in Vireo once it's been exported to DSpace, ProQuest, or another repository? So, yeah, okay. Courtney's has launched the poll. All 4 questions are in this single poll, and we'll take a few seconds, maybe 45 to 60 seconds and ask you to answer these questions, and then we'll see what the results are.
I'll give a little context to these questions came from our Vireo User Group Steering Committee because they wanted to take the opportunity of having so many of you in one room today to help us figure out some things that we've been talking about in the steering committee. You know, we're really curious about people upgrading to Vireo 4 and how that's going. We've also seen a lot of new ways to sign into Vireo coming up at TDL in our membership. We've had requests for other options outside of Shibboleth, so we were wondering if that was happening elsewhere as well. And we've also been seeing something consistently over the years is that people are using Vireo as sort of a repository. And so once things are exported into a repository system, we've seen a lot of our users at TDL at least still keeping the content in Vireo, and so we wanted to get a feel for how that was going in the rest of the community as well. Right now I'm seeing 31 out of 45 have answered. Christy, do you want to call it?
Yeah, let's wait 5 more seconds. You have not much time to answer your questions if you're going to.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead
Okay.
and end it. And I'm gonna share the results here. This is great. So we have almost 50%. Christy, can you see the results?
I can, but I have, yes, I
Let's
think you're sharing them, yes.
Okay, good. Just making sure everyone can see. So as you can see here, we have almost 50% on Vireo 4. I'm guessing that's because we have a lot of TDL folks here today. But if you're using Vireo 4 outside of Texas, if you can just let us know in the chat, that would be really cool to know. A lot of folks on Vireo 3 and a couple of you still on 2. And some of you don't know, which is fair. Well, one of you. It looks like a lot of people are looking to upgrade right away, and other folks want to but need a little bit more time. We needed more time at TDL, so we understand that entirely. And then other, I'm assuming other is probably folks who maybe are not using Vireo yet, so if you can let us know about that in the chat too, we'd love to see it. Billy, you're saying the top half of the responses is not displaying.
That was me. Never mind.
Okay, you good now? Okay. Single sign-on, it looks like 94% of you are using Shibboleth. Only a couple are using another form of authentication. If you want to let us know what that is in chat, we'd love to know. And asking people about whether they keep content in Vireo once it's been exported. 84% yes, so that is not a surprise to us at all. I've definitely heard that people keep the metadata for their needs, kind of to refer back and find things. And some of you, this is also not a surprise to us, aren't sure how to go ahead and delete those ETDs from Vireo. So thank you so much, y'all, for participating. This is helpful for us. And I'll make sure to keep a copy of these results and share them with the final notes from the meeting. And John mentions in chat too that other in question 2 could also relate to anyone who's already on Vireo 4, right? Thanks for that, Christy.
Thanks. That was really informative and nice to see all those results. And happy to be here. So glad all of you are with us today. And I'm going to hand it over to, well, so that Courtney can continue with some updates on development and migration.
Thank you. Thanks for the introduction. And again, thank everyone so much for being here. I'm Courtney Muma. Again, I'm Deputy Director of TDL, and I also manage the Vireo service. I'm also going to be joined in this section about the migrations by Christopher Starcher from Texas Tech and Frank Smutniak, who is our lead developer. But I'm going to start off by talking a little bit about how we've gotten to Vireo 4.2.5. So as a lot of you know, Vireo 4.0 was initially released in the summer of 2019. It was a big deal. It allowed for several significant improvements in the system, and those improvements were based on feedback from the Vireo user community. In particular, Vireo 4 offered customizable submission workflows, controlled vocabularies, improved metadata based on the TDL Metadata Working Group's report, and updated guidelines for electronic theses and dissertations. And it also allowed for enhanced field control for filtering, flagging, and tracking. But as some of you became aware, as did we at TDL, Vireo 4 wasn't quite ready for prime time back in 2019. So TDL and the Vireo Steering Committee focused on getting Vireo 4 to a place where our community could run it in production. So over the past year, TDL has partnered with Texas A&M and Texas Tech developers in nearly a dozen technological improvement sprints. We also depended on feedback from many of our TDL hosted users, especially those at Baylor, Texas Women's University, UT Dallas, UT Southwest Medical, and Texas Tech. Over the course of these sprints, we've achieved significant improvements in performance, the user interface, and export functionality, which had been causing some issues. So now, as you see on the slide, we are on Vireo 4.2.5, which will be the last major release for the foreseeable future. We've got it to a really good place. I've shared a couple of links on the slide. One is a little bit about the history of Vireo versions over time, and the second is kind of the way that you can look at detailed development is through GitHub. And so I've linked to the Vireo GitHub as well. So Vireo 4 marks significant changes in the system from prior versions, as I mentioned. And we've highlighted those in the past couple of annual meetings, which are both recorded. Vireo 4 users can create those independent workflows, and those can be based on the submission type, the college, the degree, and other things that enable those institutions to collect different information based on submission type. So for example, an institution can collect different information from doctoral students than master's students at the time of the document submission. While in Vireo 3, students typed information such as committee member names, email addresses, and department names. In Vireo 4, institutions can upload lists of controlled vocabulary that display a drop-down menu for student use, and that provides more consistent spelling and terminology, and it reduces the amount of metadata editing that our admins have to do. So on this slide and through sharing some links in chat, I wanted to share some resources to help you navigate the changes in Vireo 4 from prior versions. So the first is the video, What's New in Vireo 4? And that's on YouTube. The second link is differences between Vireo 3 and 4's interface. This is something that we did because we wanted you to easily say, hey, when I was in Vireo 3, I used to do this thing and now I can't find it in Vireo 4. So there's a table there that lets you easily see what happened to that thing that you were used to seeing in Vireo 3 and where it is in 4. And then I've also linked to the Vireo 4 user documentation, which is mostly complete. We've still got portions we need to complete, and that's an ongoing project at TDL and among the Vireo Steering Committee. The other thing I have here on the slide is this wonderful slide. Emily Wookner did a poster for US Electronic Theses and Dissertation Association conference last year. And what it does is offer a side-by-side comparison of Vireo 3 and 4, and it's got some visuals from the interspace and descriptions and some comments from users. So I hope those things will be useful to you over time. Obviously, when we have time for discussion later, if you have questions, we've got all the right people in the room to help you answer any questions you might have about Vireo 4 and changes. But I wanted to give you those resources today so you had them in your pocket. And I think everything's been shared in chat. Thank you so much. I'm going to move on. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about TDL's hosting service migrations. Christy described our hosting a little bit. We do host 13 institutions, but we have 14 instances because we also host a sandbox that's open for anyone. So 9 of our 14 hosted Vireo instances are currently in production on that most current version of Vireo 4.2.5. Our sandbox, which we've just shared here in chat, is also on Vireo 4.2.5. So you, if you don't have it already in your own institution, feel free to poke around in it if you're not already on that version. And so, yeah, I just wanted to share that information. I also shared the actual institutions who are currently upgraded on the screen. And I want to give an extra thank you to those institutions, those TDL members who have really helped us make Vireo better for the entire open source community. We've had so many people engaging in these upgrades and migrations who really dedicated their time and energy to helping find bugs and helping us tweak things here and there to help us find performance issues. And we just really appreciate it. So next up, I'm going to hand over to Frank Smutniak, our lead Vireo developer at TDL, and he's going to share a bit about his own upgrade and migration process as it's been refined over the last couple of years. He'll also be available to answer some questions about Vireo 4 upgrades and migrations for you. So Frank, you ready?
Yes, hello. So I'm really breaking it down into an upgrade process, and by that I mean going from a Vireo 4 to a more new Vireo 4. So if you are already on Vireo 4, you just need an upgrade process. And this takes less than 45 minutes. And actually, I recently did a site in under 17 minutes, so that was nice. It's very automated. Requires the server to be down, and I'll coordinate with the site admin for a good time to do that when there's low traffic, or give you a chance to tell your students to be off of it for a while. So this upgrades not only the Vireo code, but also there's going to be various dependencies, software dependencies, and get you up to the latest version of the various tools that Vireo uses and utilities. So if you're on Vireo 3, you will need a migration process. This is going to take a bit longer because you're copying completely from one server to another to a new Vireo 4 server. And this will copy a lot of the files, the dissertations, the license files. And also, Vireo 3 and Vireo 4 have a bit different schemas in the database. So that has to be translated. So there's a translation process. And all this is managed by Ansible scripts, and the actual translation is done by a set of Ruby scripts. And the only manual thing that needs to be done at this point is a canonical list of your committee members and advisors and their email addresses, because in Vireo 3, students could put in free-form names, and so there's variance in spelling, there might be an extra space. So to get that nice list that Vireo 4 works best with, you either need to supply it, or most likely you can generate it locally from your institution. So that's everything else is fairly automated. Let's see. A small site can be migrated in under an hour, bring you from Vireo 3 to Vireo 4. A large site like UTexas Austin took 55 hours recently. Again, they're not in production in Vireo 4 yet, but so we're creating a new site, and then once you've had a chance to test the new Vireo 4 with your data, and you are confident that it's the way you want it to be, then we will change the URL, your existing institution-etd.tdl.org for the TDL hosted sites. The URL will be remapped to that Vireo 4 server, which will then become your production server. Again, the focus of the migration code has been to support TDL hosted sites, and so that all my scripts are oriented towards that. I've tried to separate out as best I could what's going to be the public side, but it's not there yet. But I eventually do want to make this migration code and scripts public. So that's basically the migration process. If there's any, and the upgrade process. if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer what I can.
I'll start us off. And then again, if y'all have questions, feel free to raise your hand using the hand raising feature. You're also welcome to just unmute and ask, or you can drop your question in chat and we'll grab it. But Frank, I'll start us off while folks are thinking about it. Any questions for you? What's been your biggest challenge so far during this process?
Probably if you're using something other than a very standard shibboleth setup, sometimes that's been a challenge to get things to work right. There's been there's one site that's not on shibboleth, but that's fine. We've worked that out. There's and even on shibboleth, people might have variants in the terms that they use. So little things like that. Other things might be there might be some along the way I've had to decipher that some of the data might have special characters in it, and those need to be dealt with appropriately for storing them and processing them from one database to another. But that's, again, those things are in the past. There's just been a lot of challenges. I worked out the schema differences, but again, now it is very automated and it is running very smoothly, and I hope it is always thus going forward. So, and yeah, everyone's been very helpful with coordinating with me to figure out a good time to bring the system down, and the challenges are dissipating. So.
Any questions from attendees? Anything at all about upgrades and moving into Vireo 4 for Frank while we have this opportunity?
I'll just also add that it's exposed bugs very well, and the reports we're getting are dissipating as well. So.
We've got the first question from James Creel, and then we'll go to Stephanie Larison.
Hey, Frank, thank you for that excellent rundown of the migration process. So I was given to understand that you had some utilities in place to take advantage of Vireo 4's controlled vocabularies for the committee member names after a migration. And do you plan to make those utilities available with the rest of the migration scripts?
Now, I built this tool that allows people to view the list of all the different variants in Vireo 3 and select what group are really referring to the same person, and then pick the canonical version. It's a tool I set up, and I presented it to a few sites, and in practice, people found it easier to get the data from their own institution. If there is a demand for that, I can bring that. I can figure out a way to make that available. It's actually something I set up on the Vireo 4 migration site as people are testing it, and so they can also access this from a slightly different port number, same URL. It's available, but in practice, I don't think it's really been used. Maybe one site used it, but again, people can more easily get this from their institution in most cases.
I see. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stephanie, it's great to see you.
Thank you. It's good to see you guys too. My question, I guess I have two questions. Have you migrated anyone that had two instances of Vireo yet? I guess nobody did. Anybody? I don't know whether any TDL hosted actually had two instances. So like one for undergrad and one for grad.
I have not seen that. I've only seen of the TDL hosted sites. It's all been single sites for one site to serve them all.
Very good. So my second question is, we're considering moving to Vireo 4 and possibly with TDL. So, but we do have two instances. So, and I imagine that would be quite difficult to try to merge and copy them into one instance. So we are considering, one thing that we're looking at is maybe just starting fresh. So with a Vireo 4, I'm curious if anyone has done that you know of.
We do have one hosted site that is a fresh install, and they're building their data fresh. They had no prior Vireo 3 to migrate. So yeah, that's even easier from my perspective.
Right. Thought it was. So I think that's all I have right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie. Great questions. Frank, we have two questions that are very similar
Okay.
in chat right now. So I'll go ahead and ask the first one from Misu, but Allison has basically the same question. They say that they don't use controlled vocabulary for committee members and their emails. So can they still keep the practice of students adding committee members and emails themselves?
That's a good question. I think it would be just a matter of setting the input type for that field, but yeah, I can't imagine it's a problem. And actually, if anyone else at Texas A&M might know more specifically, I'd be happy to hear. But I don't believe it would be a problem.
I think you're right. I think it's just changing the format type and I'm seeing a thumbs up from
Okay.
James as well. Yeah,
Mhm.
so it's not a problem. Thanks for your questions so far. Does anyone else have any questions? Well, we've got Frank here to help.
Courtney, I have a question for the group. For
Okay.
those who indicated that they're interested in upgrading to Vireo 4, but they need more time, Stephanie may have already addressed it from her perspective, but are there others that'd be willing to share what they need? Is there anything they need from us maybe that would help them?
That's a great question. Yeah, how can we best support those of you who would like to move to 4, but need a few things in place first? What are those things and how can we help? Spoiler alert, you're going to have an opportunity to fill out a form with that answer towards the end. We'll share from Christopher Starcher later today.
So
But
maybe I just started your juices flowing. You can think about it and
get
respond
everybody
later.
started thinking about it. Yeah. I'll wait just another minute for questions or for answers to that, Billy. So any other questions for Frank or answers for Billy? I'll wait one more minute and then we'll move on. Frank, we have a question from Lisa. Has anyone reported problems installing the software, presumably outside of TDL?
I don't know. I think there was maybe there's some problem long ago, maybe a year ago. I remember someone having trouble getting it working. I don't hear about it directly. That it's not something that I've heard of other than that one institution that had some issue.
And Jill answered as well that their concern is trying to schedule around submission deadlines. And I just added in response to that, that's been something we've seen at TDL for all of our hosted institutions. It's been challenging not only to schedule around submission deadlines, but also just coordination between the library and the grad school and then the IT group that is responsible for Shibboleth. That's a lot of coordination. And when you're doing that around deadlines that are different at every institution, that's been challenging for us.
Yeah, it's always good if we can have the Shibboleth person and others lined up and have it being a quiet period. where there isn't a lot of activity.
Lisa followed up by asking if someone did have problems installing Vireo 4 outside of TDL, what would be the best contact to get help? And Lisa, great question, and thank you for asking it. That's definitely the Vireo user list. So it's the bug listserv. And that's the best place to ask questions. And then usually, especially if we've got developers who are engaging on the listserv, thank you, Christy, for sharing the link to the listserv in the chat there. But we've got places for developers to engage with other open source developers in a Slack channel that we host at TDL. And so if someone's kind of needing more of a technical support and they email us through the Vireo listserv, we'll go ahead and add them to that Slack. Now that doesn't mean an immediate answer because it's not a service, but it is a good community. So generally you'll get an answer within 24 hours if it's a weekday. Thanks for these questions, y'all.
Yes, thank you.
It's always great to have, like, you don't get a lot of access to the lead developer, so I just encourage you to ask all the questions. Christy's also added the subscription link for the Vireo User Group listserv. And so again, that's the best place to go outside of TDL hosting. If you're part of the open source community and you're looking to upgrade and you're having any issues, or you just want to connect with other people. Oh, thank you, Seth. So we have in chat, Seth says that at Illinois, they tried to migrate their Vireo back in 2019, 2020 when it wasn't quite ready and had trouble. So they're currently in progress with another attempt and it's going well so far. So that's really good to hear. I see Chris Starcher is smiling. We're very happy to hear that because we've done a lot of work, I think, on the tech side to get it ready for prime time. Thank you for sharing that, Seth.
Yeah, I think one thing we did find is that we are going to have to do something to address the community members being a vocabulary thing now. We've needed it to be free text, so and I think what we'll probably end up doing is doing a little bit of customization to make it like something where you can enter like the committee member's first name and last name and then sort of add a committee member. So if that's like something we can contribute back to the code base, if people are interested in a more free text way of doing that, then we're probably going to end up doing that.
Chris, do you mind engaging with that question? Thank you.
Sure. This goes back to the questions earlier about the controlled vocabulary. So all of this is customizable in Vireo 4. There are a set of inputs and they're all different and you can choose. So by default, those fields on just your default installation is going to be associated with controlled vocabulary, but you can always change that. You can change the input type and you can unassociate input types with controlled vocabularies and all of that. It's all customizable in the admin interface.
Thanks, and James confirmed that too in chat.
But thank you for your willingness to commit back to the project. I appreciate it. But fortunately, you won't have to do that in this case.
Okay, good. Yeah. And I'll be in touch if there's any other thing like that.
Okay.
That is music to our ears. Thank you, Seth.
Absolutely.
We also have a question, and I wonder if Christy can help with this one, because Christy Park has been leading the DSpace migrations at TDL. Susan asks, are there any plans to consider Vireo 4 to DSpace 7 crosswalk with DSpace 7 entities? And if not, is there interest from the community? So we haven't done this yet. We have been obviously working on Vireo 4 with DSpace 7 among our own users. And so Frank, you can comment on this too. But I'd like to hear from both Frank and Christy on this.
Sure, that's a great question, Susan. I think the short answer is no, we haven't been working on that, but I would be very interested to hear about interest in the community around it, and see if there's possibility for shared development. I can talk a little bit about where we stand with our DSpace hosting service at TDL. We're in the process of upgrading all those hosted repositories to DSpace 7 currently. We're about 60% of the way through on that. We'll finish up in early November with the DSpace repository upgrades. We have not been, we did a lot of investigation into entities before we started the upgrades and testing and planning with that entity's functionality. And for anybody who's not a DSpace user, the latest version of DSpace, DSpace 7, comes with the ability to create entity types other than just items in the repository. There's been kind of one type of thing in the repository. You can do one thing with that. Now you can create other entity types, like, for instance, a person entity, right? Like a faculty member or something like that, and do work with that entity. What we decided with the DSpace hosting service is that we would not fully engage with the entity's functionality right out of the gate. So we're getting everybody upgraded, and then kind of starting a new investigation into what our members can and could and should do with the entity's functionality in their repositories, and work collectively on that, because it is a big, just a big
it is a big change.
Yeah, and not fully, in our view, usable in its current setup, without being able to also go back and retroactively apply the entities model to existing content in the repository. I think that's where a lot of where we kept getting hung up with it. So that's a long way of saying we're not ready, even on the DSpace side, to fully engage with entities through our hosted DSpace repositories. That said, looking forward, I would love to think about ways that these two platforms could work together. And I'm curious, Susan, if you can speak a little more about what you're thinking.
Yes, absolutely. I'd love to. So we at Georgia Tech have actually heavily invested in the entity model of DSpace 7, especially for advisors. So we've gotten so much feedback from the Georgia Tech community of really wanting to have every faculty member be able to use the repository to see the theses and dissertations for which they served as advisor. So we've really heavily invested in cleaning up our advisor name metadata, and then also implementing the DSpace 7 entity model, the person model, for authors as well, but really advisors were pushing this for us. But with the SWORD deposit, there isn't a way from Vireo to DSpace. You know, it's a Dublin Core, you know, crosswalk is easy and submitting the item itself, but building those entity relationships can't be done with the SWORD deposit. So we're interested in actually working with a vendor to work on that integration of Vireo 4 and DSpace 7. But I wanted to see, is there interest in the community is it something that we could actually give back to the community if we do have this integration work funded, working with a vendor, if there's interest in that?
That's really exciting, Susan, and I'll let Courtney speak to the question about contributing back, and how that might work. I'm curious, just curious, like what approach you're thinking of taking with it if you're using the DSpace 7 API. Like what SWORD isn't the protocol that will work.
Right.
What's the method?
Well, we haven't gotten there yet.
Gotcha. Okay.
I'm thinking it probably would be API. That's what we've been doing with archive space and DSpace. So I'm assuming we would probably be going in that same direction. But we haven't actually gotten to that point yet.
I suspect there would be some interest in just getting away from SWORD as the sole method of deposit, or the main method of deposit generally, because it is right now, I think Vireo, well, DSpace is only supporting version 1 of SWORD, right? And so there are other alternatives, I think, for deposit would be interesting.
We got a thumbs up from James Creel at Texas A&M when you said that, Christy. And so Texas A&M hosts their own Vireo, and they also host DSpace and are also moving into DSpace 7 over, just kind of now getting started, I believe. And so, as you know, Texas A&M developers have been essential to Vireo for improvements and development over time, as Texas A&M has been since the beginning of Vireo. And so I'm sure that our developers, including, TDL, TDL's Frank Smutniak, would be really excited to talk about this with you. You see us all light up, Susan, when anyone starts talking about contributing back to the software. It's fabulous. It's what you want. That's what a healthy open source community is. So we're working in the next couple of years, and I'll talk more about this after our break today. But again, spoiler alert, it's going to be talking more about the wonderful Christopher Starcher and how he's joining us as a product manager over the next couple of years for Vireo to help us work on community engagement with development, especially, and other contributions outside of TDL to sustain Vireo. And so all that to say, yes. We would be very excited to continue conversations with you and talking about the ways that we can integrate with DSpace 7. Christy?
Yeah, a couple of things. One is, Susan, I would say what we would want is to be included in the initial conversations with the vendor about the approach, just so we can make sure we're coordinating it in ways that we can accept it as a pull request or whatever.
That makes
and
sense.
I think, yeah. So, and secondly, I wanted to mention, somebody put this in the notes, but I don't remember if anybody mentioned it previously, that we have that Vireo Users Group listserv, but we also have a Slack channel in our TDL Slack for the Vireo open source conversations. And if anybody wants to be added to that, we can certainly do that. And that would be another good way for developers and others to be able to converse with Frank and Courtney and the A&M developers, etc., around some of these questions. The third thing I wanted to address was Misu asked, and she got an answer, it looks like, about whether you can publish ETDs from Vireo 4 to DSpace 7. The answer is resoundingly yes, you are able to do that via SWORD. We're just talking about some other options for doing it that might be better supported.
Yes,
Yeah,
and with Vireo 4,
yeah.
well, with Vireo 4, as you are going from DSpace 6 to DSpace 7, it's a minor tweak in the settings in the database, and I can do that very quickly. So
that's exactly what I was going to ask you to add for us. Susan, sorry.
Sorry. I was going to say, I didn't mean to imply that you can't do the SWORD deposit, just that we've really invested in the entity, what we can't, so we can do the SWORD deposit fine, absolutely. there's just a lot of work on our end after we do the deposit to set it up with these entity relationships to departments, to advisors, most of all. And would love to talk to folks about the best direction forward. And also, we are very interested in contributing that to the community in a way that's useful.
That's wonderful, Susan. Thank you. That we would love to work with you on that.
So two things. One is that Misu brought up the committee issue again in chat, but this is something that we're going to have to explore from TDL. Misu, thank you for filing a ticket. They're having problems in the most recent upgrade with just adding in the community members, but that could be something local. Next, I saw that James had his hand up. So James, where'd you go?
Oh, I did.
Okay, there you are.
Yes. Just one comment about the new entity model in DSpace 7 and the limitations of SWORD. SWORD is very strictly limited to the documents. It's very focused on the documents. And if you want to manipulate the entities, DSpace 7 exposes everything on the back end through its API, through its application programming interface. So you could write a program to manipulate the entities potentially. So you have pretty much unlimited access to the DSpace backend, well, mediated by the API, that is, if you are going to use a different deposit mechanism than SWORD. You could also build on top of SWORD. You could also use the SWORD deposit for the items and then do another automated process to manipulate your users or committee members or whatever after the fact. So DSpace 7 is a very flexible platform. That's all I want to say.
Thank you so much. And I'm really, Susan, I'm so glad you brought up that subject because I know it's top of mind for a lot of folks. Thanks everyone for your questions. This is such a good opportunity to engage with you. Let's see, I've got one last question I'll take here in Slack or in chat from Lisa. Is there documentation of the database tweak needed to go from DSpace 6 to 7 for SWORD deposit? They'll need that to replicate. And that's actually from Sid, it looks like, at Rice. So Frank?
Sorry. No, there's not any documentation. It's just something that recently I found that I needed to make some changes, and it's just changing a URL. The URLs that are used for between DSpace 6 and DSpace 7 for the TDL hosted sites. So for other non-TDL hosted sites, I would know what. There shouldn't be any differences in terms of that if you're just using the SWORD one.
Thank you. Okay, we'll take one more. This will be the final question before we get back in because I'd like it to get a break shortly after the hour. Jill asks about controlled vocabulary again, this time for faculty. If version Vireo 3 had free entry, what happens in 4 with the controlled vocabulary? Are the legacy free enters kept? And I believe that answer is just a simple yes.
Yes, they are, because without human curation, there's no way to know which ones are the correct ones. So you will see the variants that the students typed in your controlled vocabulary in Vireo 4, unless that canonical list is provided.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Frank, for sharing, and for Christopher for jumping in, and Christy. I'm going to start back into just a couple more things before we take a break. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about accessibility improvements. I know this is very important to so many of you. Christopher is going to help me out here too, but I'm going to get us started. And then we'll have a short break where we can all get up and stretch our legs for the before the remainder of the meeting. Hopefully we'll be able able to finish before noon Central today. That's the goal. So after the break, I don't expect us to go for the full hour. But I'm happy to if there are a lot more questions and engagement. We love to hear from you. So let's talk about accessibility. So TDL, some of you who are members might know this already, but those of you who are not, and some of you who are members might not know, we've been undergoing web accessibility remediation for all of our service infrastructure as part of our strategic commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. Ultimately, our goal is to ensure broad and equitable access to all of our tools, content, and communities. In particular, we need voluntary product accessibility templates or VPATs for each of our services, and we'll take on any necessary software development for remediation of software applications in order to come in compliance with WCAG guidelines. So our governing board approved funding for an accessibility audit, which we completed on Vireo in late 2022. And so I'm going to hand over to Christopher Starcher to talk a little bit about the Vireo 4 accessibility improvements that were based on that audit and also based on some community contributions.
Thank you, Courtney. So as Courtney said, Knowbility did an accessibility audit for Vireo, and they outlined several areas where Vireo needed improvement. And so we prioritized those issues. We did a series of, Courtney mentioned this earlier, that we've been doing quite a few sprints over this past year. Starting in the spring, we did a series of consecutive sprints. We got through 6 of them. And in several of those sprints, we addressed these issues. Courtney, if you'll go to the next slide, I guess is the, yeah. So the development that we did, one of the things that we prioritized was making sure that the submission side of the application was as accessible as we could make it for the students. So we prioritized that over the admin side. However, we were also able to address issues on the admin side as well. A lot of what we had to address were keyboard and screen reader accessibility issues. And we were able to do a whole lot of work on that. And the difference is quite dramatic in what it was and the accessibility level prior to us working on that and what it is now. We also were able to add some customizations on the admin side for color contrast ratios throughout the application. So if you saw an earlier version prior to 4.2-ish, and then you've seen a newer version of Vireo, you will notice that there are a lot more options on the admin side to customize the colors within the application to provide the correct contrast ratios for your users. I will also mention that we did receive some feedback from Reed College. They took a Vireo for a test drive on a previous version. I don't recall which one it was, but and they were able to give us some feedback. They identified a lot of the same issues that Knowbility did, and then a couple of others. And anyway, we had a really successful series of sprints on this, and I'm happy to say that Vireo is much more accessible than it was prior to our work this past spring.
Thank you, Christopher. Yeah, we're really excited about this. There's just like kind of a handful left, really. of accessibility improvements, of course, until, you know, that's going to have to be held off for the next round of development, which will likely be possibly in late 2024, sooner if there's anything more urgent that comes up. But we wanted to share that with you because we're really proud of that work, and we know it's really important. So it's time for a break, y'all. I'm just going to give us 5 minutes for everybody to stretch our legs, take a quick break, get some water, more coffee, tea, or whatever. We're going to come back and we're going to talk about Vireo sustainability, how to give feedback, how to contribute, and again, that kind of spoiler alert about sharing Christopher Starcher's new role over the next couple of years working with the Vireo open source community, and then we'll allow for some more open discussion and more of your questions as well. So come back with us at 10 after the hour. We'll see you soon. All right, everybody. We'll get started again. I hope you're hydrated and you were able to stretch, feeling good. Like I said, I don't think we're going to need the whole hour, but we're willing to stay here until noon central for all your questions. We should have lots of time for more questions and more discussion. But I'm going to start talking a little bit more about Vireo sustainability and work that we've been doing at TDL. So again, when the Texas Digital Libraries Governing Board approved that accessibility audit, they also approved a sustainability assessment for Vireo. So TDL and our Vireo User Group Steering Committee engaged with consultants from a company called Open Tech Strategies to assess the Vireo open source software community's status and its needs, and also make recommendations for long-term sustainability of the open source project and community. So Open Tech Strategies, or OTS, made their recommendations for sustaining the Vireo open source system and community based on an analysis of public documentation, as well as interviews with users and developers, probably some of you who are here today. They suggested that the first set of priorities for Vireo open source would be prioritizing improvements in development processes, upgrades, and community management. And after an initial reorganization and outreach campaign, funds from both TDL and outside contributors should then be directed to ongoing management of the deployment, development, and community collaboration for the open source project. The recommendations described in the full report from OTS include strategies for Vireo open source development and management staffing, expanding investment beyond TDL hosted membership, improving upgrade pathways and migration paths, reducing the barriers created by dependency on Texas A&M's Weaver elements. Weaver is a framework at Texas A&M that's essential in Vireo. And then also improving documentation and our roadmaps. We'll share in the chat a link to Open Tech Strategies if you're curious about that group. But we were really grateful for their work on this and grateful for the engagement of the steering committee as we went through the process. So in order to begin implementing many of the recommendations that were in the sustainability assessment, TDL has contracted with Vireo Steering Committee member and current product owner, Texas Tech's Christopher Starcher. So this was my spoiler alert earlier. So in this position, Christopher will be focused on building the Vireo community of developers and users in ways that enhance the long-term sustainability of the product and of TDL. Specifically, the focus of this position is going to be on removing barriers to external participation in Vireo open source work, particularly in areas of Vireo use and development and software development. So this is a lot of things. This means improving documentation for deployment of Vireo, providing guidance for non-TDL users to advocate for Vireo in their institutions, adopting and enforcing best practices for open source development generally that can apply to Vireo. And then again, exploring those options for maybe moving away from some dependencies, including Weaver at Texas A&M. Next, we're also going to work on establishing Vireo open source funding strategies. We want to diversify the financial support beyond just the TDL hosting service income. Currently, that's the only income that's contributing to Vireo financially. And finally, Christopher is going to be working on identifying priority objectives and publishing a longer term 3 to 5 year software development roadmap that will also apply to some of the community work that he's going to do. So generally, what we're looking for in this work is leaving the Vireo open source community in a better position to fund a permanent position to assist with either software development or community coordination or a little bit of both. With all that in mind, I'd like to shift to Christopher to talk about how he'll approach community development for Vireo and some discussion around how to give feedback and how to work with the community.
Thanks, Courtney. So the first thing I'll say is we welcome your feedback, all of your feedback, and we need your feedback in whatever form that takes. Vireo's it's a community project, a community product, and it doesn't exist. It doesn't continue without the support and the involvement of the entire community. So there's several ways that you can be involved in Vireo. As mentioned earlier, there is a listserv. You can join the listserv. That link was provided in the chat earlier. We've had good conversations in the past there, and the community can help you out. Specific people, if you need to, more of a technical side, we're on there as well. Those of us that have some knowledge of the technical side. So please feel free to use that for any questions you have. As well, if as Courtney mentioned earlier, if you do need specific if you have some specific questions about deployment as you're trying to deploy Vireo 4, there's the possibility as well. We do have a development channel on Slack, and you can request to be part of that while, for the period that you're working on your deployment. As well, if you do come across issues that you think really is a bug and needs to be addressed, please feel free to submit an issue on GitHub. We maintain the repository on GitHub, and that is where we manage all of the issues and all of our sprints, our development sprints. All of that is managed there in GitHub as well. If you're curious about what happened in prior sprints, the ones that we've been discussing, feel free to go and look. You can see all of the issues there. You can see the accessibility issues. Those are all tagged. You can just kind of go through all of that and just see what's been done if you're curious. But please feel free to submit a bug. As we've been going through the deployment process, this is where we've figured out a lot of the issues that we've addressed in our recent sprints. Was once we started trying to deploy Vireo 4, in particular, the performance issues that we've addressed recently that we didn't really come across during our development earlier, but once we started to deploy live Vireo instances, we ran into some issues that we were able to address. So also, going to back to some comments made earlier, if you can or willing to contribute to the code base, we would love to involve you in that. Fortunately for Vireo and all of us here, Texas A&M University has really taken up the lion's share of development on Vireo 4. And Vireo 4 would not be here without them. We would like to expand the community involvement for code contributions. So if you are willing and able to do so, please contact us. We will get you involved. We will help you get any information you need, and we are happy to assist you with that. We would love to have as many contributors as we can get from the user base. It's good. It's good for you, and it's also good for the project. It's good to have a large scale um, user base that's contributing to the code. It really, it makes it better. It makes it better for everyone. And so I hope that if you have the resources to do so, that you would consider doing that. We would love to have you. I have a survey that I would like for everyone to fill out. This survey does have some of the same questions that were asked earlier in the Zoom survey. I'd ask that you would please fill this out as well. It will help me aggregate that information in a better format so that we can do something, make some decisions and move forward on that. The survey does ask for your email. I promise that we're not going to spam you or sell your information. It's merely in case we need to get in touch with you because of comments that you might make in that survey, and we would like to follow up and maybe get some more information from you. And yes, Courtney, did you have something that you wanted to add?
Did I accidentally raise my hand?
Oh, no, sorry. James, I'm sorry. It was James. I just saw a little Slack message come across, but yeah, James, would you
Yeah,
like to
well,
add something?
I'm here as the obligatory Texas A&M representative. And indeed, we have invested heavily into the Vireo product over the years, and we're avid users of it. And the crazy situation is that Texas A&M is still on Vireo 3. So TDL and all of their member institutions are a quantum leap ahead of us, being on Vireo 4. But what I would say is that open source projects are difficult. And when you make an investment, it might not be immediate with returns. But the community efforts are what enables that productivity over time and over the years. So we're right now at A&M going to go live with Vireo 4 in 2014. So that's a positive story from our front. We have multiple instances running, the Office of Graduate Studies, as well as some undergraduate programs. So anyway, I just want to echo what Chris was saying and try and reinforce it. And with that, I'll hand it back.
Thank you, James. Yeah, James and Texas A&M have really been great partners in this journey through Vireo and in particular Vireo 4. Well, even the prior versions as well. So please, this survey will help us tremendously. It will help with current decisions being made about the current version of Vireo, as well as future development of Vireo. So please fill that out. You may also share it with any of your colleagues that may not be here, which is another reason why it has some of the questions in it that were also answered here, is because I would like for you to share it with any other colleagues that either use Vireo at your institution, developers that have interacted with, or systems admins that have interacted with Vireo. The more feedback we get on this form, the better decisions we can make for Vireo and make Vireo better. I think that's it. I think that's all I have. That's my spiel.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We're so excited to be working more closely with you. It's already been so nice working with you, Christopher, on the Vireo steering committee, and having you come in for the next 2 years as product manager, I think is just going to boost this project. You've all seen a sneak peek of why we're so excited to be working with Christopher today. And James, thank you for your support and enthusiasm too about the open source project. The other thing I think I want to add is, you know, we're not just talking about support in forms of development. We're going to try to be creative over the next couple of years and make even more kinds of opportunities for people to contribute outside of development. And Christopher's going to take the lead on that too. So yeah, especially thanks to our TDL members who have been through the migration and upgrade hard work over the last couple of years and who've really given us so much great feedback to help us improve the system. So that's basically all we had for you today. I've shared the survey link in chat. We've got time left for any kind of final questions and answers that you might have for any of us at TDL, our developer Frank, the folks, James, who is never obligatory, representing Texas A&M developers, or any of our steering committee. So if you have any questions, please raise your hand. And you can just chat with us or add them into the meeting chat and we'll make sure to get with them. While you're thinking of your questions, I'll mention we will share this recording. We'll also share the notes that were taken in the community notes document today. We'll share the slides from today that have all of the links that we've shared, and we'll also share the survey the polls that we did during this session. And so you'll see all that in the coming week from us. So any questions for any of us here today? Or anything you'd like to discuss while everybody's here? Stephanie.
I have some questions. Sorry, my little thing. Sorry. I have some questions actually for some of the folks that are on the call, not necessarily TDL and committee members, but well, in fact, you guys are. I am interested in learning how the May or the spring submissions went. For those of you, I think this was like the first big giant use of Vireo 4 was the spring submissions, I'm assuming. So I was kind of hoping that you guys could share your experience with the understanding that 4.2.5 that was released afterward, and that so it sounds like there was a lot of great improvements there. I don't know if that was just accessibility, but also for the any other issues, but I'm curious how that went if you guys are willing to share.
That's a great question. And I have maybe a disappointing answer because we didn't have folks in production for that May. Really, we started getting people in production more with this 4.2.5. It's the first version where we've seen significant production improvements and performance improvements, which is why we're so excited about it. Everyone's so much happier and why we've been able to get it out in production at so many of our members. We're looking to finish up by the end of the year with all the rest of our members as well. So I think ask that question again, maybe after the fall term. And we'll see how that goes. But I think that's going to be a good question for the list.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I did not know that, but I thought it was important. It was important for us to know. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And just before you ask your next question, I just want to note here, we had a question in chat from Laura that it sounds like for bug reports, the #1 place to add an issue is on GitHub. And the second would be the user email list. And that is correct. So I just wanted to say that out loud for anyone who's not watching the chat. Stephanie, you had another question.
I don't remember that, but I will ask. Could you guys please confirm that Vireo 4 can handle multiple workflows? So like in our case, we could have a workflow for undergraduates as well as a different workflow for graduate students, or however we wanted to set that up.
Yeah, I see that John Crossno beat me to it, but yes, we can do that. And many of the institutions do have multiple workflows.
We have another question here in chat. Should we not report errors to the TDL help desk? So I will clarify. Good question, Allison. Anyone who is a TDL hosted Vireo member, absolutely use support@tdl.org, the TDL help desk. I was answering Laura on behalf of the open source community. So for the community writ large who are not TDL hosted members, GitHub and the user email list. Thank you for that question. No, thank you for that question, Allison, so much. Other questions, again, feel free to drop them into chat and we'll get them answered, or feel free to unmute, raise your hand. So again, for those of you not watching the chat, Stephanie is asking if any folks who are using open source Vireo not hosted by TDL, are you using 4 and gone live with Vireo 4? I thought I saw someone in the beginning. Laura, that's great to hear it read. Susan's saying making the switch in early 2024. Awesome. I'm trying to find in chat. Someone said earlier that they had gone into 4 already, but I don't know if it was in production. Yeah, and Christy says it sounds like Illinois is working on it, but not quite there yet, but actively working on it, which is exciting.
Yeah, that is correct about Illinois. I think I remember seeing a chat a while back about WT, and I don't know what institution that refers to, but
I think
Yeah,
it was
that's
West Texas A&M, a
Oh, okay.
TDL member.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah. We're all acronyms here in Texas, Seth.
Yeah, I feel like our situation is somewhat similar, but maybe not quite at the scale.
Everything's bigger, right?
Yeah. So they tell me.
Other questions? I'll go a little bit longer. Make sure everybody, while you're percolating, you have an opportunity to ask before we close shop for the day. All
Sorry,
right.
I think I'm
Oh.
sorry, this is
Oh, go
Stephanie.
ahead.
I think that Lisa had a question, but it looks like it might have been a direct question to me. So let me actually, it's okay. Let me change to everyone. I'm going to post, this is from Lisa, but it looks like Sid via Lisa, now via me.
So slightly related to open source Vireo 4 hosting, looking at 4.2.5, is Docker now the preferred way to host in production? We're working on Vireo 4 production, but not there yet.
I know that there is a Docker deploy for it. We are not using it at TDL yet, but I know it's available now, and I just haven't experimented with it.
There's another question too from Jill about ProQuest interaction. Frank, will that be changing? How is that handled?
I'm not aware of any changes. We're still exporting the way we did as in similar to Vireo 3.
And I believe that answers Jill's next question as well. ProQuest is all or none, no way for an individual student to opt out if institution requires ProQuest deposit.
I suppose that in the list that you build for export to ProQuest, you could manually not choose that student submission. But other than that, there's not a formal built-in Vireo way of doing that.
So Laura has a question going back to the poll at the beginning. Is there a way to batch delete submissions?
I've not done it. I don't believe there is a way. It's something in testing, I've manually done it through the database, but I don't believe there's anything through the Vireo user interface.
Laura, that would be a great feature request. And you wouldn't be the first, so that'll probably get a lot of upvotes.
And that would align nicely with our with the idea, if you do not want to use it as a repository to keep the data down.
Yeah, Laura, like not too long ago, we were talking about this issue, and I think what we've come to realize is that we don't think it's a good idea for people to be using Vireo as a repository, but we haven't really built a lot of functionality into Vireo that prevents them from doing that. So what you're suggesting would be a potential good thing to add to make that possible.
Thanks. Yeah, I was like deleting them one by one. I was like, oh my God, what are we doing here? But it makes sense from the pull of like so many people like having a need to keep them. That makes a lot of sense too, that there wouldn't be necessarily a button for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Susan, I think, gets to a refinement of that issue where they'd like to keep the database values, but not the asset store. And again, that's coming from the perspective at Georgia Tech, but we've got folks in the TDL hosted community who they don't want to keep the actual documents, but they want to keep all that metadata so that they can keep looking at, that information over time. And Lisa says that the ability to archive years old submissions, the ability to archive years old submissions that have already been sent to DSpace might be nice to reclaim duplicated disk space. Yeah. Heard and seconded and thirded. Other questions? Get them while they're hot. Okay, I'm not seeing anyone typing or hands going up. So I'm going to go ahead and just thank you all again for coming today. Thanks to all the development community, to James, to Frank, to Christopher, to our amazing Vireo steering committee, who's really helped us get to this point where we are now, and for contributing today. And we're really looking forward to Christopher's work in the coming couple of years. So for a lot of you who have joined today from the open source community in particular, expect to hear more from James, or from Christopher, sorry, over the course of the next year, as we kind of figure our way forward for better sustaining this awesome product. We're grateful for everyone coming today and for sticking with us. And we're going to be able to give you 19 minutes of your time back today. So, go get hydrated, stretch your legs. Thanks again so much for coming. And that's a wrap for this year's 2023 Vireo User Group virtual meeting. Thanks everybody for coming, and take care. Bye, everybody.